Yes, my name's Ian Thorne. Yes, we talked about that rather unfortunate American accent, didn't we? But I'll just press that I've got it, as we all are, I suspect. There we go. So yes, good evening. My name's Ian Thorne. I'm the chair of the Friends of the Marden Valley, and I'm a Wiltshire councillor. And this is one of an ever-increasing list of absolutely fascinating talks on a whole raft of issues relating to the flora and fauna of the Marden Valley and further. So delighted to see so many people here. Thank you very much indeed to Susan from Even Needs Trees, Robert from Friends of the Marden Valley, and I'm particularly delighted to welcome Steve Oakes, who's going to talk to us about songbirds. I was saying earlier that songbirds is one of the particular areas of interest. The downside of the summer is being woken up by the bright lights at 5:30 in the morning, but one of the marvelous things is being woken up as the birds begin to sing. Although I did say a little bit earlier that one of my chickens decided to start squawking and singing at about 5:30 this morning, which wasn't quite so welcome. But no, Steve is with us, so it's wonderful to see you, Steve. I gather Steve's a long-term volunteer, nearly 40 years. Goodness gracious me. That's remarkable and a huge credit to you. With the South Wilts RSPB, majoring on giving talks, organising and leading bird watching outings, including the Dawn Chorus events. And frankly, Steve, if you've got a Dawn Chorus event, certainly I'd love to hear about that, because I would certainly get out of bed very early to come and hear and watch and see, because that sounds to me absolutely wonderful. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Steve to regale us and enthuse us on the birdsong, and then I'm sure he'll be happy to take questions a little bit later in the evening. Steve, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening, everybody. Just going to share the screen, and here we go. Slideshow from the beginning. Okay. Susan, give me a thumbs up if you can see the front page and also hear me.
That is all good, Steve. Yeah, we're good to go. Okay. Perfect. Yeah.
Right. It's okay. Just going to minimize here. Right, okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this short trip through an exploration of the Woodland Dawn Chorus. Before we get into listening to the birds and the Dawn Chorus, I thought I'd just answer a couple of obvious questions. First of all, why do birds like this firecrest you can see here sing? Well, as you can see from my explanation, in spring, with one or two exceptions, a song solely by the male of the species, and it's to hold a territory to which he's hoping to attract a mate. That's fine, but why sing so early in the morning? Why get us up before dawn? Well, several reasons. I think probably it's not a good time to go foraging, looking for food in the dim light of dawn. Very difficult to find food at that time, and also, particularly if you're an insectivore, the insects are not particularly active at or before dawn, so that makes it even harder. If you sing during the day and you stick in one place, then you may well attract the attention of a predator. So singing before the bright morning light betrays the singer's position is a good idea. And this is not always the case, but generally speaking, there's less background noise in the often still air at dawn, so song carries further, which increases the chances of locating a mate. Very importantly to notice is that the chorus peaks from 30 minutes before to 30 minutes after sunrise, but the variety of song can be confusing at that time. That's absolutely true. So you need to be in a position an hour before sunrise to enjoy the arriving performers as each takes their turn on the stage. Fortunately, they don't all start to sing at once, although it won't be long before they all singing. So where am I taking you? Well, I'd like to take you on an imaginary walk around the RSPB's Garston Wood Reserve. This is a reserve I know well since it was acquired by the RSPB back in 1986. It's located just over the Wiltshire border into Dorset. One side of the wood is actually the boundary between the two. It's mostly oak with hazel coppice. It's an SSSI for its flora. You can see it's a good bluebell woodland. In fact, many of the plants are actually indicators of ancient woodland. So the central spine of the wood is left as high forest, and the areas around the central spine are coppiced on a rotation basis to maintain that combination and that variety in the woodland. And fortunately for us, it's home to a good number of breeding birds, some of which we'll have a listen to as we go through the talk. But I'd like you to just look at the top left-hand picture and see exactly where it is in relation to the landscape. It's situated within the Cranbourne Chase area of outstanding natural beauty. But as you can see, it's surrounded by fields. Those are either arable or grasslands. So in fact, the first bird, well, we're up with the lark, it's not a woodland bird at all. But if you stand in the car park at Garston, this bird will break the silence, particularly if there's still a bit of moonlight around. And it sounds like this. You can quite see why the skylark features in both poetry and music. Fantastic song, and it's a wonderful way to break the silence. Well, sometimes during skylark song, or maybe even before, Garston's tawny owls might still be awake. And the male might give a territorial hoot or two, or there may be a conversation between the pair. We've got two pairs of tawny owls at Garston, one at the northeast corner of the wood and one in the southwest corner. So they're well separated. Some of the birds you get in your garden are actually birds from the woodland. So probably the first of the diurnal woodland birds to get going will probably be the robin. Lovely considered and separate phrases with pauses in between for you to listen to. Many people tell me that they don't recognize birdsong, but I'm sure most of you who have any interest in the natural world will recognize the birdsong from a robin, and probably from a blackbird as well, because the thrushes get going soon after the robin, and the most numerous and widespread of them obviously is the blackbird. This has got a lovely, rich, mellow song full of lovely notes. I think I always feel that when it starts its song, it's a very laid back song. It's almost like a yawn and a stretch. See what you think. Also starting up now will be the song thrush. This is a rather different beast in terms of its song. It's much more in your face, or should we probably say in your ear, with loud, occasionally strident phrases, which are repeated in case you missed them the first time. So this is Browning's bird in Home Thoughts from Abroad with its careless rapture. Song thrushes do vary in their song, but there's a basic sequence which you're going to hear now. The last time I led or helped lead a dawn chorus at Garston, which is a few years ago now, we found that there were 5 singing male song thrushes all going at the same time. And in an 85-acre woodland, that's quite a few, and you have to move away from the territory of one if you're going to hear anything else, to be honest. They can drown everything else out. Somewhere vocally between the blackbird and the song thrush, but without either of those birds' range, is the larger mistle thrush. We have mistle thrushes singing on the northern edge of the woodland at Garston. It stretches for some distance, this song, and I suppose based on the fact that, you know, this is also referred to as the storm cock because they tend to sing after and sometimes even during bad weather. It has a quite a long distance song. You can hear it from quite a distance away, and it's kind of haunting and rather wild. Although not restricted to woodland, in fact, I'm sure many of you will have dunnocks in your own garden, breeding in your own garden. We do have them breeding at Garston. They have a rather jolly song, and they start singing quite early in the season, probably into March and beyond. Still singing now. The song has rather uncharitably been likened to an unoiled supermarket trolley wheeled rapidly down the aisle. As we approach daybreak, the frequency of songsters joining the chorus increases rapidly, and it's now getting quite complicated. It's likely that wrens will be leading the way now. This bird, it's a tiny bird, but it has a very loud series of high-pitched trills. In fact, it's got 6 different aspects to, or episodes to the song, and that could be up to 64 different notes, sung in just 5 to 6 seconds. So if you're standing next to wren's territory, it can dominate rather like the song thrush, because we have plenty of wrens at Garston. Numbers are only affected during periods of bad weather during the winter. So after the beast from the east, numbers did fall, but they're back up again to what they were before then, which is good news. Remarkably, the bird can peak at 100 decibels. I suppose once you're standing next to it, you'll realise that. So we're moving on now to the first of the migrants that we get at Garston. We have 4 migrant warblers that breed there, and this is usually the first to arrive. This is the chiffchaff. Arrives from towards the latter part of March into mid-April. It's a nice, easy one to remember as a song. If you remember nothing else, I'm sure you'll remember the chiffchaff, because it basically spells its name. It has 2 syllables, chiff, then chaff. Except when you listen to chiffchaffs, you kind of realise that some of them break the mould. In fact, quite a few. So you get chiff, chiff, chaff, or sometimes chiff, chaff, chaff. If you listen closely to this recording, you'll hear that there's a sort of quiet preamble to each phrase. It sounds to me as though someone's winding the bird up, getting it ready to sing. Despite the simplicity of its song, it punches above its weight, and you can clearly hear chiffchaff singing on the dawn chorus above some of the other birds. Also arriving similar time, or the latter part of March into April, is the blackcap. Now, the chiffchaff and the blackcap are both short distance migrants wintering in the southern Mediterranean, and recently have undergone a fairly rapid increase in numbers. It's nice to be able to say that when so many other things are not doing that. I think the blackcap song is rightfully popular because although they start with a hurried little chatter, they end with some rather confident and high-pitched fluting notes. It's a nice, easy bird to listen to. Both the chiffchaff and the blackcap have sub-Saharan long-distance migrant cousins that we also find at Garston. So this is the willow warbler. It's unfortunately declining in the south, but the further north you go, the better it is. So you get up to Scotland, numbers are hardly falling at all, and it is pretty common up there. Arrives a bit later, early part of April onwards, and looks very like the chiffchaff, but has longer wings befitting the fact that it has to fly further on migration. It also has a really rather nice, pleasant, cascading song, delivered usually from near the top of a tree, although it doesn't have to be a willow tree. Very pleasant song to listen to, that. The other long distance migrant is still doing okay. Not gone on to the amber or red list yet, like the willow warbler. It's pretty rare in gardens, but this is called the garden warbler. Rather unkindly, it's described as a bird having no distinguishing features, which I suppose is a feature in itself. I guess that perhaps doesn't matter too much when you spend most of your time singing from cover. But it does have a song a little bit like a blackcap, but is generally faster and doesn't have the blackcap's range of notes. It's more of a burble, as you'll listen to. The complication comes sometimes when blackcaps, which live in close proximity to garden warblers, and they will live in the same general area, start to pick up and mimic some of the garden warblers' notes, which makes it rather complicated to know what you're listening to. Fortunately, garden warblers don't possess these other notes that the blackcap has, so there's no double mimicry. Still a nice little song though. I did actually find somebody quite recently who does occasionally get garden warblers passing through their garden, but it is a huge garden with lots of cover on it. There's some more familiar birds from the garden, but really these are woodland birds. So 4 of the hole nesting tits can be found during our walk around Garston Wood. Now, all these tits have multiple calls, which can be quite confusing, especially as you tend to hear the calls at least as often, if not more so, than the song, even during the breeding season. However, the blue tit does have a short but clear silvery descending tremolo, so you should pick that up within these numbers of calls that I'm going to play you. It's said that the great tit has up 70 different calls. Why, I don't know. Why you'd need that many. And the song is really a repetition of a selection of these calls. It's usually restricted to 2 or 3 syllables. It can be loud, bell-like, and includes some rather sharp, buzzy sounds. Perhaps the most recognizable is the so-called teacher, teacher, teacher call. Has been said that when you're leading a dawn chorus walk, if you hear something that you don't recognize, tell everybody it's a great tit, because you've got a good chance of being right. This is the smallest of the hole nesting tits that we have breeding at Garston. This is the coal tit. It too has a song consisting primarily of 2 to 3 syllables, but it's usually faster and higher pitched than the great tit, and sweeter and clearer in tone. Probably one of the most important woodland birds at Garston is the declining marsh tit. Something of a misnomer in a woodland setting, I think, but never very much a woodland bird, just a misname. The local population, fortunately, is apparently stable. The song and indeed some of the calls are often very fast and buzzy and include the sneeze-like pitchu call. By now, the latecomers, the finches, should have joined the party, finally. The chaffinch's song is often characterised as a fast bowler in cricket, accelerating up to the wicket to deliver the ball, and the final flourish is as he does deliver the ball. I think it's a reasonable representation. See what you think. In contrast, the goldfinch has a fast, liquid, musical song, mostly delivered in phrases, separate phrases, but sometimes in a continuous run. I guess you can partially see why this bird was a popular, and I suspect some places still is, a popular cage bird. The bullfinch's song is not particularly musical. I think I'm probably being generous in that description as well, as it might pass you by. It's so self-effacing. It consists of various few type notes and the so-called creaking gate song. But again, it's a highly variable one between males. Actually, that recording is probably the most musical bullfinch I've ever heard. So, our walk has taken us to a ride which abuts the high forest at Garston. This is non-interference forest, so trees are allowed to mature and ultimately die. And during that period, of course, more niches and holes appear, which is perfect for nesting great spotted woodpeckers. Now, I'm sure you're aware, great spotted woodpeckers don't sing, they drum. And then drumming is done by both sexes, not just the male. It's not restricted to dawn either, although you are likely to hear it on the dawn chorus. Drumming is the most important contact signal between pairs during pair formation. And it's also used by the male to advertise a territory, which is kind of handy because we know of 3 different territories at Garston. Nuthatches nest in natural holes or old great-spotted woodpecker holes, adjusting the hole size if necessary by plastering them up with mud. Now, these birds are vocally active year-round with quite loud and far-carrying calls. The male song is a simple series of loud whistles and notes. It's very variable in tempo, though, from slow, drawn-out whistles to rapid, repeated short notes. There are some notes in there that are quite similar to some that are sung by the song thrush. You have to listen to see how many times things get repeated. And if it's more than twice, it's going to be a nuthatch. One of my favourite little birds can be found in this habitat in the high forest. This is the tree creeper. It nests behind flanges in the bark of the mature trees or in holes in dead branches. It has a difficult to hear song. You have to be reasonably close to hear this. It's thin, high pitched, which descends progressively with a sort of a fluty, silvery song. But by the time it descends down into the finish, it's kind of more confident and louder. Joint smallest European bird with the firecrest I showed you at the beginning, and we do hope to get firecrests eventually in Garston. They are spreading in westward from the southeast of Europe, and it's increasing. But this is its resident cousin, its more common cousin, the goldcrest. The goldcrest song is another one you have to be fairly close to, I think, to hear. And I'm afraid as you get older, you start to lose the top end of your hearing. So it can become rather difficult, and I'm speaking from experience here. It has a song which is characterized by a friend of mine, but saying that the bird is climbing the hill with the first part, and then the finally it reaches the top of the hill and falls down the other side. So it's kind of diddly, 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 whoosh. My final song is of a species you would have heard at Garston up to the turn of the century, but we don't have them anymore. In fact, there are very few nightingales left in Dorset, Hampshire and Wiltshire, and you have to go further east in England to guarantee hearing this bird's remarkable repertoire. It was in West Sussex I was in West Sussex a fortnight ago at the RSPB's Pulborough Books Reserve, where there were still 6 singing nightingales, which was a wonderful thing to hear. So it's a bit of nostalgia, really. Rather like the Song Crush, the elements are all there with each nightingale, but they may not come in the same order each time. So you may be able to spot different individuals. Well, that's it. We've returned to the reserve car park now after the walk. All those birds will have been singing. And let's finish with 4 minutes of a dawn chorus, which features some of the birds you've encountered. I'm afraid it's not from Garston, but from a Hertfordshire wood. Hey, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that short dissertation on the dawn chorus.
Well, Steve, thank you very, very much indeed. I thought that was absolutely delightful. And I have to say, one of the great things about Susan keeping her camera on was I watched her with her eyes closed, listening to the last 3 or 4 minutes of that beautiful scene with the bluebells. And just picking up on a few things. I'm probably the least expert of anybody in this room, but the sort of the sound of the blackbird, which is so redolent, I think, of summer mornings, and particularly where I am on a rather grey and damp evening, it was rather delightful. And the chaffinch, your fast bowler analogy, I thought was lovely. And I have to say that the garden warbler, although you say it has no distinguishing marks, I'm sure the one we saw was wearing eye makeup. It had a wonderful sort of silver ring around its eyes.
Yes,
I thought was delightful. And who could beat the goldfinch, which is charming. So Steve, thank you, genuinely, thank you very much on a rather grey summer or spring evening. Hearing those songbirds was absolutely delightful. So I'm hoping you'll be happy to take some questions.
I'll do my best.
Welcome some questions. If you want to put your electronic hands up to ask a question, if not, then put your camera on and wave at me enthusiastically. But if you'd like to ask a question of Steve, I'm sure he and I would be delighted. I think you've stunned them with your detail and depth of knowledge, Steve.
I actually have a question.
Oh, go on, Susan.
I was just hearing about the different migrant birds, and I was just really thinking about how much variation there is in the dawn chorus through the year, and clearly the light changes as well. It's something we're very, very conscious of in the spring and the summer, and I just realized I didn't know how much it's significantly different as the seasons rotate.
I think primarily you're going to get your resident birds starting to sing obviously earlier than your migrants arrive. So it's a good idea to try and get a situation where you've learnt the residents. So song thrush, blackbird, particularly dunnock, they start early. Wren, mistle thrush starts early. You might even get mistle thrush in February.
Right.
So get those done, and then when the migrants start to arrive, you've got those. Then you hear something different, from what you're used to, and then you can start to pick them up. Some birds also breed later, so not only do the finches breed later and sing later on a dawn chorus, but they actually start to breed a little later than some of the woodland birds. So your timings, if you were to go say in April, you would get the first of the migrants along with your residents. You might not get mistle thrush because they're already breeding, already nesting, and it's possible that that one will have suggested, I don't need to. It depends. It depends on the competition, whether there's necessary for territory, whether you would or not. Later on, if you go in May, I was funny enough, although it wasn't at Garston, I was at a woodland east of Salisbury on Sunday morning, doing an early morning one, not an absolute dawn chorus one. We were at a 6 o'clock start, and a different type of woodland, but same again. Robin in the car park, robin, blackbird, song thrush, wren, they were already there. And later on in the morning, we started to get the finches to start to sing. So get to season-wise, and I saw a question there, why do birds also sing not in the breeding season? Some birds sing, or shall we say vocalize, because I think with things like the nuthatch and the tits, calling it a song is a little bit iffy. Why do they sing outside the breeding season? Well, the breeding season could extend because some birds are double brooded. So they'll have one nest, get that all out of the way and then start again. And that will also include some song. So later in the season, you may get the parrot outside the breeding season, but in fact still in the breeding season, because the season could get extended. Goldfinches, for example, doing very well, and they're regularly having 3 broods throughout the season. So you might even come across goldfinch singing in July or August, and that applies to several other species as well. Not necessarily at dawn though, could be throughout the day. And also, a particular case of singing outside the breeding season would really be the robin, because it's the only bird really that we're going to come across, the only songbird that we're going to come across, where the female has a song which is sung at the end of the breeding season, which is usually late August, early September. And this is to hold what you might call, we'll call it a winter territory, really. So after completing breeding, the birds, the robins become kind of it rather than male or female. They don't recognize each other as, husband and wife. It's a shotgun marriage. And the female will start to sing, and the juveniles as well will start to sing in the autumn, late summer, early autumn, to then hold a territory. So you could get, you could go to the woodland and you could hear, several different robins singing to hold a territory outside the breeding season. And the same in your garden. And you can get incomers from abroad in the autumn, because we do get lots of robins from continental Europe coming in, and they will sing as well. So it's a competition locally. So outside the breeding season, that does happen.
Steve, thank you. Lots of thoughts and questions and comments have started to come in. Becky doesn't have a question, but does say it was a lovely talk.
Good.
Helen Abbott, beautiful presentation, thank you. A question in terms of if it's possible to have a copy of the recording. I'm hopeful that we can circulate.
Yes, absolutely. This is being recorded, and we will be putting it up on the Avon Needs Trees website and the Friends of Marden Valley YouTube page. And in fact, all our recordings from all our online talks are up there. So I'll send a link out to everyone. After the presentation, there'll be an email going out, and that'll have information about where to find the recording.
Marvellous. I've got questions to come from Tara and Fiona, but I'm going to go to my friend Robert McNaughton for the next question. Robert.
Thank you. Steve, I was really, really enthralled by what you did there, so thank you very much. I'd echo Ian's comments. Could you just give a general overview, please, of decline, maintenance, or perhaps increase of bird population? You mentioned the nightingales have left Wiltshire and Dorset and can only be found in Sussex now, but there's other bird species you said were maintaining their numbers. Could you give a general overview of how they're all faring despite the difficulties both here and of course North Africa and south of Europe?
Okay, Rob, yes. I'll try not to be too extended in the answer, but just going back to the nightingale, they are retreating east. The best place to come across nightingales is Sussex, Kent, Essex, so this east and southeast of the UK. Long distance migrants, the sub-Saharan migrants, are doing the worst. So those that travel furthest are encountering, well, a whole potential range of problems, either on migration. For example, those that cross the Sahara, as you probably know, is extending. So stop-off points in the Sahara getting more difficult. Birds are not able to complete the migration successfully, may die on migration. Getting here, if they get here, the vast majority of them are insect eaters. It's the main reason they're here, to make the migration, because we have a summer flush of insects, including lots of flying insects. And these are insectivores, which is why they make the reason they make these great migrations. And it's been calculated that we have lost tons and tons and tons of flying insects in the last 30, 40 years. So no food when you get here. That's also been a problem. It's also potentially on their wintering grounds where some species are still caught as food, including cuckoos and things like that as well. So generally speaking, the long distance migrants are not doing well. Some of our resident woodland birds are also declining. Willow tits have never been common, but they're becoming less and less common. Again, that is usually down to suitable nest sites. Marsh tits, it's variable. In some places they're becoming less common, others they're maintaining their numbers. Things like lesser spotted woodpeckers, again, numbers have decreased nationally over the last 30, 40 years. Wherever you look, unfortunately, the vast majority are going down in numbers. And this is not just in the UK, this is worldwide. I think the Americans reckon they've lost something like 40 million birds in the breeding bird. No, sorry, that's Europe. 100 million birds in the last 25, 30 years across America. One of the reasons, of course, for lack of insects is effectively chemicals, pesticides and the like, that have caused the demise of our insect population and all our invertebrates. And of course, that means no food for the birds. So yeah, overall, not great. Some species, however, are taking advantage of climate change. So for example, we are seeing new species arrive in the UK, mostly, for example, in the herons and their allies. So you must have seen, many of you must have seen the little egrets that have come up from originally from Africa through Europe. Little egrets started breeding, having colonized France, started breeding in southern France in 1931. And then it took another 65 years to make their way all the way through into the UK, and they're still going north and doing very well. Great white egret is joining them, cattle egrets. So these are three white egrets, are all now breeding in the UK. This has all happened in relatively recent times. They're going to be joined very soon, I'm sure, by glossy ibis, maybe purple heron. So these birds are actually doing rather well. Spoonbills are making a bit of a comeback. And of course, some birds are doing well because of reintroductions. The red kite, for example, you must see plenty of red kites where you are. Those have all come originally from the Oxfordshire release scheme, but are now breeding all the way across the south. So some birds doing well, some birds not doing so well.
Thanks, Steve. That's a nice overview.
Thank you, Steve. I've got a couple of questions from Tara Castle, which we don't think we've covered. The first one is, why do birds sing outside the mating season?
Yeah, I did suggest that the mating season is possibly longer than you might think, because it would extend through to several broods in some species. Blue tits, for example, only usually have one brood, but great tits increasingly are having two broods in the south. So you may well get song a little later than you'd expected. Also, singing outside the breeding season to hold a winter territory does occur. And the bird that we're most familiar with doing that would be the robin. And that's when both sexes actually do sing. So you may get that situation. And somebody I saw asked, maybe Tara as well, about the migrants of the same species sing differently. Well, the answer is yes. We all have our accents. I mean, I've actually lived in Wiltshire for 46 years now, but I'm from West London, so I've still got a West London accent, you know. So I sound different to somebody who's born and bred in Wiltshire. It's the same with birds. For example, you get a lot of birds from Scandinavia and Western Europe of familiar species. We'll take the robin again. We regularly get robins from as far afield as southern Scandinavia come and spend the winter with us across the North Sea. And it's difficult to actually, if you hear them in the winter singing to hold a territory, it's difficult to determine that they sound any different from our robins. But if you were to record the song and plot it on a sonogram, you'll see there are slight differences. So you can actually then say, well, that is not a British robin. That's a bird from abroad. And you might be able to say, well, that's a bird from Northern Europe, you know, because it's got a different accent, slightly different song. And one I came across in Spain some years ago, chaffinches regularly seem to have an extra note or two on the end of their song. So it's a bit like the bowler's bold and noble. Or as somebody said to me, what did they say? They said, oh, it says they're singing Olé at the end because they've got this this extra couple of notes. So yeah, there are differences. There are differences.
Thank you, Steve. I just love the idea of different robins or other birds having distinctly foreign accents, and you can possibly.
It's not probably so obvious as are our accents, but yeah, it is there.
That's absolutely lovely. I've got a question from Fiona, which says, is there a resource that provides the description of each song, i.e. the teacher, teacher, teacher for the great tit?
If you go onto the RSPB's website and you put in the species you want to look at, they'll tell you something about the species, and they'll give you access to a recording, which is usually from a European organisation whose name escapes me at the moment. And that you can listen to the song. There was a system, this is going back a bit now because they were on audio tape. There was a system where you could listen to a song, and before you listen to it, it was rather like I described the song in my own way. So hence the business with the Dunnock and it sounding like a supermarket trolley. So yeah, that it is available. If you just go onto bird sounds, there are CDs available with bird sounds on them with a description. So that might help.
Steve, I'm surprised there isn't an app that you can wave.
There could well be an app. If you buy the Collins Field Guide to European birds on an app now, that has effectively the book identifying the birds on there, and for each species it has a range of their calls and song associated with it. It probably has a description as well, but I'm not 100% sure.
Tara tells us this is one of the great things about getting people to get the information that you can glean. Apparently there's an app called Chirp.
Okay.
So I don't know whether you have to pay for it. I suspect you do. It's a bit like the plant apps, but certainly for those of us who want to revisit and brush up on a bird song, then I think Chirp is the place to check out this evening.
Okay.
Sue Deedigan, the Dawn Chorus segment was enchanting, and I completely agree. Any other questions? Steve's brilliant. You get fantastically in-depth answers. If there aren't any further questions, I'm just going to indulge myself, if I may, before I pass back to Susan, who's got an event she wants to publicise. But I do want to mention one participant who's here this evening, which is Bob Kenway, who is our vicar in Caen at St Mary's. And Bob is leaving, I think, in June. I don't know whether Bob's actually listening in or just...
I am. Yes.
He is. So
yeah, July. Yes.
July, and it might be the last of our gatherings that he attends. It might not be, hopefully, but I just wanted to say, if it is, that, you know, from Friends of the Marden Valley, we wish you all the very best, Bob, and hope that your retirement goes well.
Thank you. I shall still be in Wiltshire and still be interested in what goes on at the Marden Valley and beyond. And that was a fantastic talk. I didn't get the very beginning, but it was very enjoyable. Thank you.
It was quite affecting, I thought, particularly those last few minutes were of the Dawn Chorus. But Bob, thank you very much. This won't be the last time we all thank Bob, I suspect, anyway. But so I'm going to pass to Susan, who's got an event that she wants to engage and encourage you to participate in. Susan.
Right. Thanks, Steve, so much for that talk. I agree with what everyone said, and yeah, Ian clocked me closing my eyes and just being transported there with the with the Dawn Chorus. That was wonderful. And the descriptions, I will really remember. That's going to really stick with me, especially that shopping trolley. I love that. Yes, is it on a different, slightly different note, so to speak? We've got an all things trees event coming up at the Avonlea Trees Hazeland project between Carn and Chippenham. Some of you will be very familiar with it, others may not have been there. It's absolutely beautiful spot, and because we're Avonlea Trees and we've planted a lot of trees, we're going to celebrate some trees on Saturday the 11th of June. We have some tree identification walks with Neil Talbot from Avalana Ecology, who does a lot of our surveys, also a very knowledgeable man. So 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. he will be leading tree identification walks through the site. So if you want to brush up on your tree knowledge, and he will guide you with recognising some of our native British trees. And we also have a whole range of family activities. So for children aged 5 to 12, accompanied by parents and carers and aunts and uncles and anyone else. And we will be flexible about siblings, but generally it's aimed at 5 to 12, between 1:30 and 3:30. We have our very own fantastic John Chu will be doing all kinds of kids tree themed activities and trails around the site. You don't have to remember all this because it's on the event page on the Avonlea Trees website, and I will also send out the link for that in the email after the event this evening. So it's Saturday the 11th of June, the various tree themed events at the Hazeland project. We'd love to have you come and join us, and yeah, let people know about it.
Susan, thank you very much. And I'm pleased to say, because Robert's already taken a look, that Chirp is
yes.
indeed free from the App Store. So you can relive a lot of what we've heard from Steve this evening, for this evening, tomorrow, for weeks to come from Chirp. So do download it, and please do join Susan and her team on the 11th of June. Well, if there's nothing else that anyone wants to add, I'd just like to again say thanks to Steve. It was rather affecting. It's rather wonderful, isn't it, to hear those birdsong, and particularly the recording of the Dawn Chorus and that stunning kind of carpet of bluebells. So can I thank Steve very much indeed for being here and leading us here. Susan, as always, from Avonlea Trees, which is a fantastic organisation. Robert McNaughton, of course, my friend from the Friends of the Marden Valley. For everybody that's joined us, and please do grab your version of Chip and spend the evening listening to more birdsong. But thank you very much indeed for joining us. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
Susan. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.